This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. What if comparing car insurance rates was as easy as putting on your favorite podcast? With Progressive, it is. Just visit the Progressive website to quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's direct rate, then their tool will provide options from other companies so you can compare. All you need to do is choose the rate and coverage you like. Quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
So hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Traci Stein. As always, I'm so happy to be here with you. So today, I would like to talk about a topic that has been talked about again and again, but hopefully what we'll talk about today will come across in a bit of a new way, in a more useful way, I hope. And it's a little bit of a weird subject to talk about right now because the topic is abundance and cultivating abundance. But hear me out, because I know a lot of people right now are feeling anything but abundant, right? Maybe some people are. A lot of people are really worried right now about their finances, about the markets, about losing their jobs, about trade wars, and much, much more. And I just want to acknowledge that, I am not intending with this topic to be, engage in toxic positivity. Or try to make it seem like, if you just shift your mindset, a bucket of money will show up at your door. Everything that's bothering you will be fine. That's not what I mean. So that's my disclaimer. I just wanted to get that out of the way early in the episode. But I want to talk about abundance in a broader way, because abundance really, I was thinking about this, because abundance can mean money. Right. And I think that's an aspect of money. I often think about things as like pieces of a larger pie. So I think financial security or comfort or, wealth, that's an aspect or type of abundance, but I don't think it's the only one, because all of us can pinpoint people either in our personal lives or people on TV, celebrities who have an abundance of money and are not happy. And I'm sure you can think of quite a few people as I'm talking who have what it seems like everything that maybe the rest of us would believe would make our lives great or easy if we had them. And yet sometimes their lives are actually quite tragic. Or they just don't seem happy, right? Or there seems like a restlessness to them. That doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't have a lot of wonderful things, including financial abundance, and feel abundant. But what I'm saying is that I don't think that's enough. And I think abundance is just much bigger than that. Abundance to me, and maybe to you, is that feeling of, I guess, ease or joy or both of those. It's a feeling like there is enough right with your personal world, right? So that even when things are objectively difficult, because difficult things happen to every single one of us, and some people more than others. But when we feel that we are in the flow of abundance, we're still able to find the goodness in our world, even if it's very mundane, if it's very small. So maybe part of abundance is our worldview. And again, I know how much harder it is to have an abundant worldview when things are really challenging. So I just want to acknowledge that again. But abundance can be creativity and feeling in the creative flow. And if you're somebody who writes or paints or writes song lyrics or likes making your garden look beautiful. You know that feeling of being in the flow and feeling abundant and feeling grateful to see the seeds that you planted maybe last year coming forth from the earth this year. And that is very metaphorical, but it can be quite literal as well. Abundance can be knowing that if you are going through something difficult, or if you have good news you want to share, or if there's just someone you'd like to take a walk with and have it not really be about much of anything and still be able to enjoy it. If you have somebody like that in your life, I would say that's a type of abundance. You know, again, if you have people you can pick up the phone and call, or, you know, go and visit for an afternoon and find joy in their company or comfort in their company. That is a type of abundance. And of course, not everybody has that. If you are able to enjoy the body you have, wherever it is, whatever it is right now, in the sense that you can do most of the things you need and want to do, and you have a sense of peace with where you are, even if there are changes you'd like to make, even if what abundance and joy and happiness in your own body means for you is different now than it maybe was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, which is pretty normal. That is a type of abundance. Okay? If you're enjoying a meal with a partner or a friend, or if you have a partner who is, you know, someone that you would say, this relationship feels balanced, relatively balanced, and we seem to be on the same page, or on the same page enough, right? Because, you know, there's always an ebb and flow to every relationship, even the best of ones. That is a type of abundance. Having a job that you feel good enough about going to is a type of abundance. So those are all pieces of the abundance pie. You know, you may be able to think about other aspects of an abundant life. Now, if spirituality is important to you and it isn't equally to everybody, everybody's pie is going to look different. Having a sense that you know you are here for a reason, even if you don't always know what that reason is, that is a type of abundance. So when I'm talking about cultivating abundance, you know, maybe it is financial, maybe it is spiritual, maybe it is being in a love relationship that feels healthy for you, having good friends, being able to pay your bills. Now that is different from, you know, having a fleet of fancy cars, which maybe you do or maybe you aspire to, and it's not wrong. But what I'm saying is, you know, you are in abundance when you have, again, that feeling of ease. And it's hard to really articulate, isn't it? Some of these things are really a little on the ineffable side because, you know, there are aspects of abundance that I think are easier to name, like feeling grateful. And believe me, you do not need to have a ton to feel grateful. You don't need to have a ton to feel abundant. Again, we can all find people in the public eye, perhaps, who seem to have everything anyone could possibly want and more. Maybe they're beautiful, maybe they're wealthy, maybe they're in a partnership that looks terrific, maybe they have a lovely seeming family, and they don't necessarily feel abundant. So what I wanted to really talk about today is what abundance is for each of us, practices that can help us step into the flow of abundance, but also things that get in the way of abundance. And most of us have had times when we just thought, God, why is this so hard? Why does it feel like I want this or I want that, or I've been striving for this other thing and I just feel stuck, right? Or it just feels like it's not happening. So maybe the other aspect of this podcast episode today is how do we identify some of the roadblocks to abundance and an abundant life? What does abundance mean for us? How will we know when we arrive? And I really think it's always a process, right? But some periods in our lives feel more abundant than others. That's okay. That's part of the human experience, right? If anyone tells you that they have the key to your feeling like every day is so spectacular that you can hardly fathom it, I don't know how realistic that is. I think we gain things from the times that are not as easy, not as great, not that we would choose them consciously, but they certainly help us contextualize when things are good and appreciate when things are good. So years ago, I attended this Chi Summit at the Omega Institute, and it was coordinated by Michael J. Gelb, who is a best-selling author multiple times over. When Chi, for those of you who don't know, in Chinese, it's Chi. In Japan, it would be Ki. In India, we would maybe say prana, but it's life force energy. And that was really at the heart of this Chi Summit. And it was a few days. There were, I think, 6 different types of practitioners, but Qigong and Tai Chi, even people talking about acupuncture, people who really were so inspiring and were able to do some pretty incredible things. But Michael J. Gelb is also known for writing about Leonardo da Vinci and creativity. And I've had a book of his for years. It's Creativity on Demand. And I literally just started reading it. I have way more books, probably like many of you, than I actually get to read at a time. I'll buy these books and I'm abundant in books. And then sometimes I read a few pages and I get distracted or I order other books. And then all of a sudden years go by, but I feel like I discover or rediscover the books at the right time. So anyway, I was reading the book and, he's such a good writer. If you have a chance to check out Michael Gelb's either podcast interviews or his books or his workshops, it's totally worth it. But he says many profound things right from the get-go. He's very well read and that comes through in his books, and he quotes a lot of interesting people and ties that into his larger message. But one thing he said that I thought was so simple but so profound was that he had this moment, this realization, and it was, he said, I realized that the universe was indeed vast and empty, but much to my surprise and delight, it was an emptiness from which unlimited creative possibilities could manifest. And I thought that was such a lovely way to think about things. And it was so inspiring. This vast, empty universe being filled with unlimited potential. And I think the reason I want to tie that into the idea of abundance, and I'll tie in the Chi a little bit in a few minutes, but when we feel stuck or we feel like the things that will make us feel abundant, the external things, right? And really abundance is so much about our internal disposition as well, our internal orientation to our lives and the world. And that is a fluid thing. It is not something that is static. I don't think that most people are just 100% feeling in the abundant flow all of the time. But often when we feel stuck, I've heard patients say, and people I know, and I've had this thought myself, you'll hear people talk when they feel stuck about feeling either empty, like there's not a good emotion that they can really access, or they feel disconnected from the world, or they see other people having a good time or engaging with life, and it feels just too hard. They feel like either a complete apathy or this actual kind of, weighty emptiness, or they're not sure what they feel. It's just this kind of dysphoria, or they feel overly full. Like there's so much weighty emotion and they feel stuck. And you hear people talk about feeling weighed down, weighty emotions and feeling a heaviness. And when Michael Gelb was talking about this vast universe. A lot of times when we think of the universe, we think of outer space and this vast blackness, this emptiness, this cold kind of universe again. The fact that he saw in that all of this potential, right? It's another way of looking at these times in our lives when we feel like we aren't exactly where we would like to be, or we aren't sure exactly where we would like to go. So looking at vastness rather than looking at it as empty or overwhelming, it's like, oh, it's a sea of potential. Kind of reminds me a little bit when people talk about, doing energy work or working with the matrix. Honestly, I don't even know what that really would be. But even if I think about the movie The Matrix, which I haven't seen in a long time, so don't at me if I get this wrong. But, here, all of these people were having these incredibly vivid experiences of one sort or another, but all the experiences they were having were in their minds. That's kind of true generally, right? Because if I go into a room and it is filled with people I don't know, this is just an example, I can be overwhelmed and think, oh my God, I don't know anybody here. I don't fit in. I don't belong. And that could spiral into, why am I here? What am I going to say to people? I need to go. Or I could walk into a room full of people I don't know and be curious and open and say, oh my goodness, I wonder what interesting conversations I might have tonight. Or I wonder what makes this person or that person tick. Or I wonder what I'll learn. And again, I know sometimes that's easier said than done, but that is a more kind of abundant mindset. I think seeing potential rather than overwhelm is something that it isn't equally easy for everybody, and it isn't equally easy all the time, but it is something we can cultivate. So the book I was mentioning before, Creativity on Demand, Michael Gelb, he said a few other things. He quotes from this book by Harvard Business School professor Deepak Malhotra. Some of you may have heard of this other book, Who Moved My Cheese, a business book that came out, I think, in like the 90s. So Professor Malhotra's book was I Moved Your Cheese for those who refuse to live as mice in someone else's maze. But basically, Michael Gelb is talking about the point of this book is that in order to change how we deal with our lives and our circumstances, it's important to think differently, right? And it's important to allow ourselves to have some sort of feeling of agency. And that's something that we can shift into even when we kind of don't feel like we do. I'll explain that in a moment. But in Malhotra's book, his protagonist explains that the problem is not that the mouse is in the maze, but the maze is in the mouse. And I'm going to say that again, because this is a metaphor for all of us when we are feeling stuck and not feeling very abundant. And generally, right? It's so easy for all of us to get in our own way. And it can take a little practice and creativity to get out of our own way. For me as well, by the way, I'm not sitting here behind my computer thinking, well, I've got all the answers. I don't. I'm a person just like everybody else. But, I appreciate when somebody says something that makes me think a little bit differently. And that is part of stepping into abundance. But again, the problem is not that the mouse is in the maze, right? And, but the maze is in the mouse. That makes a lot of sense to me. The maze in our minds that we feel like we can't get out of, it feels overwhelming. And let me tell you something, that could be for any reason, right? When life is difficult, we can be stuck in this, I'm going to call it a mirage, because it's taking place in our minds, but outside of us, people might not have any awareness of what's going on inside of us, but it shapes our whole world. It's very powerful, right? But this mirage of hopelessness and this mirage of frustration and this mirage of futility. And please know, when I talk about these things, I'm not dismissing the very real challenges of people who are working with clinically significant depression or anxiety or some other mental health problem. Absolutely, please, if you're feeling like so overwhelmed that you cannot move forward, or if your emotions feel too weighty, of course, always please seek a qualified mental health care professional near you. And don't hesitate to do it. That's what strong people do. They reach out and they get the help that they need. And we all have times when we need to enlist the help of others. Okay. But what I'm talking about again is just this feeling of stuckness. And I know I've spoken about stuckness before on this podcast, but it's such a universal thing. You know, a lot of times we feel most stuck before a breakthrough. I don't know if you've noticed that, or we've had a huge life change, a lot of times due to no fault of our own, right? Maybe we have a loved one who gets sick and now our role in relation to them changes to that of caregiver, or someone we care about passes away, or a job ends, or we're in a job and it just feels like it's not the right fit anymore. And it feels like we're slogging through every day because we've already learned what we're supposed to learn. And now it's time to maybe make a shift, right? Or maybe a marriage or partnership ends. Not uncommon. Or the kids move out of the house. Because any one of those things would require us to reevaluate our own identity, right? And sometimes there are also very practical effects. A marriage ends, a parent passes, or we have to reevaluate our own lives, who we are in the world, what our roles are, and so forth. So sometimes it's going to be really hard to feel abundant. And that is just kind of the ebb and flow of life. It happens to everybody. So if it's happening to you, please remember that you will not always feel this way. But what makes up the pie of your abundant life might change, right? Either the amounts of the slices or what the slices are comprised of, and that's completely normal. And maybe you're at a point where you're reevaluating a lot of who you are and what you want for yourself. And it can be daunting to do something different. It can be hard to feel abundant when we're at crossroads in our lives. And again, that's a normal part of the life journey for all of us. Sometimes we will feel less than abundant because we'll know we need to do something different and we won't know what exactly that's going to be. Or people will say, oh, it's, too late. And now I've heard people in their 30s, even not just 40s, 50s, 60s, who people have said, well, it's kind of late now. It's too late for you to change careers, or it's too late for you to find the love of your life, or it's too late for you to learn a new skill or learn a sport. I'm thinking of people who have still gone and done that anyway and done it really well. And I'm thinking of people I know personally. I'm thinking of well-known people. One of them is Louise Hay. Some of you will know that she founded the publishing company Hay House, which, as I've mentioned before, and you may already know, is the largest new age publisher on the planet. As an aside, again, I'm very honored that a lot of my audio catalog is with Hay House, so check it out. But Louise Hay, I think, was 60 when she started Hay House. And this is not somebody who is given a bucket of money to just go and start a publishing company. She really had to overcome a lot. If you've never heard about Louise Hay's personal story, I suggest you look it up because it's really inspiring. There are other people who became famous authors or famous actors. So if age is something that is making you think you cannot be abundant in the way you would like to, please just, for the time being, set that aside on a shelf in your mind. So I need to take a quick break for a few minutes, and I will be back shortly. And when I come back, I want to tell you about a really interesting story of love late in life. And if it's possible for other people, it's possible for you too. But stay tuned. I'll be right back in a few moments.
Chicago, springtime is finally knocking on your door. The snow and ice may be gone, but are you ready to step out in style yet? It's time to make over your ride at your local Chevy dealer, where you'll find the true glam team of SUVs. If you're thinking about springing forward into a new Chevy, you're not alone. The right vehicle makes all the difference when it comes to safety, confidence, and comfort on the road. You saw the Chevy lineup at the auto show. Now it's time to see which one puts the spring in your step. Need the power and durability of a Silverado, the all-weather confidence of an Equinox or Blazer, the spacious comfort of a Traverse, Tahoe, or Suburban, or the sporty, city-friendly Trax? Your local Chevy dealer has exactly what you need to shine like the new spring sun. So don't wait. Head to ChevyDriveChicago.com today. Browse the newest models, special offers, locate your nearest Chevy dealer, and start shopping online. Things are warming up out there, and you need a vehicle you can trust. Find yours now at ChevyDriveChicago.com. Chevy, together, let's drive.
Okay, welcome back. So anyway, if you've been listening to this episode, you know I've been talking about abundance, what that can mean very broadly, times in our lives when we don't feel particularly abundant. And in a few minutes, I'll get to some ways we can feel more abundant, some practices we can engage in to feel more abundant and less stuck. So before the break, I mentioned that I wanted to tell you a true story of love in the 80s. So I don't want to say who it is, but this was a person who was a fairly known person in their circle and had married the love of their life, and they were in their, I think they were probably late 70s, and the husband passed away. And I remember when I met this person, it was at a hospital charity event. This person was a donor. They were a real proponent of integrative medicine. And, you know, I was earlier in my career at the time, but I had a nice little chat at this fundraising event with this very lovely woman. I won't say her last name, but her first name was Ruth. And she had recently gotten remarried. I believe she was about 85. And granted, that is less common, but she and her very dapper octogenarian new husband were sitting on the couch together. And I have to say they were completely adorable. And this was absolutely a love match. And I have to tell you, the joy in these two people was palpable. Their joy in each other. And it was just such a sweet love story. So when somebody tells you something isn't possible, it's actually really worthwhile to look for the examples of people who have proven it is in fact not impossible. Because if it's possible for someone else, it's possible for you too. Okay. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is that, like I said, I made the Matrix reference before, and any movie buffs will say that was kind of a clumsy Matrix reference because I'm not really a huge movie buff and I'm not great at movie quotes or anything like that. And you can probably already tell that, but I think the essence is there. But inner shifts are what lead to outer shifts. Sometimes the universe just sends us a gift and we might be completely unaware, and maybe we haven't been thinking about doing X, Y, Z and this amazing opportunity or person or whatever comes along. But a lot of times, I don't know if you've noticed this, what happens is we have been thinking about something. We have been saying, I'm getting clear on what I really want for myself. And I'm not sure exactly how to get there, but I'm going to start doing the mundane things of, putting out feelers to get this new job, or doing some research about what my options are for buying a home, or, starting to get out and, stretch myself a little bit socially, step a little out of my comfort zone because I really want to make new friends or whatever it is, right? But the shifts usually happen inside of us before the good thing comes along outside of us. Now, I believe that there's both very practical reasons for that, right? We put ourselves out there in a way that we are more likely to encounter the things that would help us get where we want to go, the situations or learn the skills or whatever. But I also do think the universe has an intelligence to it. And I do think that once we start making that shift and say, well, why not me? Or what if it is possible? Or even better, oh, I can imagine how it would feel to step into this particular type of abundance. It's sometimes uncanny how these things happen. I'm going to tell you a few little examples. It's going to be different for you. One was starting a podcast. Now, I had been thinking about it and putting it out there a little bit, and I never would have pursued this because I would have said, I have no idea how to do this. Who the heck wants to listen to me? Honestly, some people do, which is great. But I wasn't somebody who was like, I think I should have a podcast. But it had been percolating a little bit here and there in the back of my mind. And I really think just the fact that I allowed myself to entertain the thought shifted something again in the fabric of the universe. Many people will call this magical thinking. By all means, please do. But out of nowhere, the woman who is now my friend, Kathy, reached out and said, hey, you know what? I think you'd be great on a podcast. She had listened to a ton of my guided meditations, again, the ones that are now with Hay House, but have been out for years. And she said, my partner and I are starting a podcasting company. Is this something you'd be interested in trying out? And it was crazy because I had literally recently started thinking about that. And I feel like that's where the universe kind of sends you a gift once in a while. Everything isn't always going to be that easy, but it's really important to appreciate when it is, I think. Here's another really simple example. We had moved to the suburbs 7 years ago. And for all the reasons people do, we wanted more space inside and outside and, for other reasons as well. And the first year was really hard. I did not know anyone. I was used to walking everywhere. It took me a few months to actually get a car. And so I wasn't really in the best place. And the first year I thought, it felt like, even though I live in a very socially active neighborhood, which is great, I just felt like, how do you just meet people as an adult? And it felt like other people in the neighborhood, everybody just kind of knew each other. So anyway, to make a long story short, I remember being in my dining room and just having this thought. And I don't know if the thought came to me or I generated the thought, because sometimes it does feel kind of like you have an aha moment and maybe it's like, your guides or whatever whispering in your ear. I don't mean that actually literally for myself, but I know that other people would conceive of it that way. But I just had the thought, oh, and it was a very playful thought. And I was like, oh, it would be great if somebody reached out and if we got invited to some really fun social event tonight and met some fun people. Now, that might not sound like that big a deal, but again, I'm in a neighborhood where we really hardly know anyone. I certainly had no idea how this would unfold. And it was Saturday early afternoon. So the odds of getting some great invitation for that evening were pretty low. Anyway, my husband and I decided to run an errand one town away. We went into a home store and just to look around, honestly. We're just looking at different items and we ran into two neighbors, a couple who we did not know well, and we're actually still getting to know. But the long and short of it is we had a lovely little chat. It was easy. It wasn't a big deal. It was just kind of lighthearted. And as they were leaving, they paused and kind of looked back and said, oh, hey, by the way, we're having some people over tonight. We'd love to have you come over. It's at this time and here's our address. It was very informal, and there was a part of me that was like, oh, I hardly know them. And, I don't know who's going to be there, what this is going to be like. But I was like, I put it out there. Why not? And we went. Turned out there were like 50 people there, which was not exactly what I expected. And I didn't know most of the people there. I didn't know anybody well. But the long and short of it is we had a great time, had some nice conversations, and over the years have gotten to know a lot of the people who were there much better and in fact formed some close friendships over the years. So that chance meeting led to a much richer social life and some good friendships even. It was the starting point. It didn't all have to happen that night. It was just a step on a different path. But the playfulness and the open-mindedness and the lightheartedness made it a lot easier to step into something different. So that's going to get me into some of the things that I want to think about. Oh, I said I would talk about chi, also life force energy. You know, creativity, again, an aspect of abundance, but creativity doesn't necessarily have to just mean that you become a painter or a potter or some sort of, amazing artist in general. Creativity can be anything. It can be the approach you take to your daily life. It can be the openness and curiosity, the willingness to step out of the way and do things a little differently. But it can be literal creativity as well. And Michael Gelb would say that tapping into creativity is tapping into the flow of universal energy, of life force energy. And I think he's right. If that feels like a fit for you, hold that in your mind. And if it doesn't feel like a fit, ask yourself, what is your idea or what makes sense to you in terms of stepping into the flow and being open? What resonates with you? So let's get to some things that I think are helpful in terms of stepping into the flow of abundance. Number one, and these are not in any specific order. I mean, I would say basically have some sense of where you want to go or what you would like to be different, right? The thing that you want to pull closer to you. But if that's hard to pinpoint right now, because when we're stuck, it can even feel hard. You can feel like, oh, I don't know what I want. I just know I don't want to feel like this. So it can be noticing how you feel right now and noticing what you want to decrease or turn the volume down on. If that's a stuckness, what would the opposite of that be? Would that be openness or curiosity? Would that be joy, gratitude? All of those things, I think, are elements of abundance and an abundant life. I also do think there is some kind of metaphysical attractor to those qualities, like that they themselves are attractors. They attract abundance, right? So that's kind of the thing. That's the starting point. But the first thing, once you have done that, what do I want to shift, right? The first thing after knowing what you want to shift, either get away from, decrease, set to the side, or draw to you, and you get to choose. And it might take a little bit of journaling to get clear on that. Pick something you can do in this moment to step into a new headspace. Now, that might seem like something where you're like, well, duh. But what I mean is sometimes you need to just make a shift. And it's hard to make a shift when you don't feel like it. So related to that, I would say use your body to help you shift out of the stuckness of the moment. There's like the big stuckness where it's like, I have this issue and I don't know where to go with it, or I don't know how to make it better. But there's the momentary stuckness of feeling like, oh, I just don't want to deal with this. When you're feeling like that, and again, it could be that you're working on a work project or you're doing your taxes or you have been trying to get better at XYZ skill so you can, again, shift into a different type of career option or whatever it is. Get up, literally use your body and go do something different. Pick one thing, and it does not have to be a big deal. So, I mean, here's a weird, mundane example, but like, I am working on my taxes and I despise it. It's boring. It's tedious. I know I have to do it. And that, like, I'd much rather be doing just about anything else. But take a break, right? When you're at peak frustration or peak stuckness, I don't care if it's, you're on dating apps and you're like, there's nobody who's a right fit for me. Or again, you've been sending out job applications and you need a break, whatever it is, get up and do something else. Ideally, get outside and change your venue. When you literally go for a walk, you are creating a completely new multi-sensory experience. So it's the air on your skin. It's the scent of your surroundings. And if you're in the heart of the city, do the same thing. You don't have to be out in nature to do it. What you see and what you hear and the feeling of your feet as you walk, that is like an incredible reset. And I think it's also why people have such great ideas, so many aha moments when they get out literally into a new space. And if you can't do that right now, or you don't have the time to do that, just get up and move your body and do something else that doesn't require all of your brain power. And again, this might sound like, well, duh, but if there's laundry to be done, as long as that's not the thing you feel stuck about, take 5 or 10 minutes, throw in a load of laundry, fold some clothes, put them away. But just reset, right? Some people can sit there and study for 8 hours. That's not everybody. And in fact, it's probably not most people. If the drudgery is studying for an exam, or, maybe you're trying to get your license in something so you can do something else, please take breaks. Most of us are refreshed when we do that, or more refreshed or less stuck. And there's data to support that. Number 2, don't wait for the stars to align perfectly to go do something different, right? So whether that's signing up for the course to study, to take some sort of licensing exam so you can do a different career, or getting on a dating app, or whatever it is, don't wait until you look perfect. That's my advice before you go on the dating app. Pull yourself together as best you can, or don't wait until you're at your quote perfect weight before you decide to go to a party you've been invited to and meet new people. Don't wait till you're perfectly fit to join a gym. I know that sounds weird to some people, but you'd be surprised at how many people will not go because they feel like they're not fit enough to join that gym and be seen in public trying to do exercises that they can't do well yet. If it's raining outside and you just need to take a mental break and get outside, grab an umbrella and, put on a raincoat. Don't wait for things to be perfect before you pick one thing and then do that thing. Right? Whether it's a very little thing, again, throwing the laundry in the wash to have a quick reset, or the big thing. Maybe you need to go back to school. Maybe you need to, take up pickleball so that you meet a different group of people and expand your social world. Number 3, I think this is something people don't really talk about that much, but although technically, yes, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, both practically and literally, but also metaphorically, right? If you know what you want, usually there's a set of steps that you have to do at minimum to get there. Remember that your path may be different. Your path might be a little more winding, right? So again, if you're Louise Hay, you didn't go to Harvard Business School and at 23 start your amazing company. She was in her 50s, 50 or 60, and had been living a life before then and doing other things and, talking to people and coming up with the idea to start a publishing company, and published her own book. So your path may not be the traditional path, or you may not start something at the time everybody tells you would have been the ideal time. Well, guess what? The next best time is right now. That's also part of taking the maze out of the mind, right? Take the restriction of something having to be perfect or having to do it in a very specific way. Just get that out of the way. You don't need that. Number 4 is don't underestimate the value of trying different kind of maybe non-traditional things to stimulate your creativity, to get out of a rut, to embrace and discover your version of abundance. And I'm saying this because creativity breeds novel solutions. And I don't mean forcing it or, just trying different things because, someone on a podcast told you to just try different things. But you may find that it takes experimenting and being open and curious to find the thing that helps you get the clarity and motivation that may feel like, they've been hard to access. And here's what I mean. Journaling, not everybody's a journaler, but you know what? You don't have to be somebody who writes in your journal every day normally to ask yourself a question and write down whatever comes to mind. Julia Cameron, famous playwright and author, there's a reason that The Artist's Way, 30 years on is still a bestseller. Her morning pages exercise, getting up and just writing 3 pages longhand, and it could be complete garbage and it doesn't matter, gets you into the flow of creativity, and not just creativity for writing a book or a play like Julia Cameron, but just the flow of creativity of discovering new solutions that may have been before you all along, but were hard to recognize. So Julia Cameron said very famously that, and I'm paraphrasing, but even if it's like, I don't know what to write, I don't feel like doing this exercise, blah, 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 blah. Maybe that's your 3 pages this morning. It's completely fine. But when you wake up, before you get out of bed or shortly thereafter, sit and have quiet time and just write 3 pages longhand. And there is something different about writing longhand versus typing. So if you are open to doing that, please do. If you are open to meditating, it is a great way to not only focus your attention, and it's good for your brain, quite literally, but meditating, of course, helps us become more intuitive, more insightful. It unlocks the solutions to the problems we have been challenged to solve. Moving meditation, great as well, whether it's mindful walking or going for a jog. If you're not a jogger, you don't need to start. But I have to tell you, there's a reason why people often get their best ideas when they're jogging. But all of these things are ways that your very wise subconscious mind can start communicating with you more directly. Because there's so much that you know about what would be helpful for you. And a lot of times it's our daytime kind of conscious minds and all the stuff we're worrying about and our self-doubts and our negative self-talk that gets in the way. You already know that. Here's another one. I believe this is number 5, and this is something I don't think people talk about, but focus on being inspired rather than being envious. But that said, if you are feeling envy, use it to your advantage. I'm going to say it again. Focus on being inspired rather than envious. But if you're feeling envious, use envy to your advantage. So as I've said in a previous episode, the difference between envy and jealousy is an important one. And it's, a lot of people don't know what that is. Jealousy is when you basically covet somebody else's affection. You have a crush on somebody and they have a crush on somebody else, and you're jealous of that other person, the person they have the crush on, that your crush has the crush on. That's a very simple example. Or your ex-partner is dating somebody new and you run into them at a restaurant and you feel jealousy, right? Because now their affection is directed towards somebody else. Or maybe your parent seems to favor your sibling and you're jealous of the attention the sibling gets that you don't feel like you get. Envy, and you can be envious of somebody when there's a jealousy issue as well, but envy is somebody else has this other thing and I want it. I'm envious of them because they have what I believe I want, or I believe I deserve, or I believe I don't deserve, but they have it. So envy can make people kind of mean. Yeah, that person's a jerk because they can't be a good person because they have this great car and I want this car and I can't afford it. Not in an abnormal human emotion, right? Or this person got this promotion and I think I'm better, or maybe I think I'm not better, but I wanted the promotion and they got it. So that's envy. But don't let envy rule you. The whole thing with envy inspiring you is somebody else is doing something that you want to do. Well, use that as an opportunity to figure out, all right, is there something about them or what they've done or what they've learned that I can also learn? Is there some advantage that they have discovered that I can also use to my advantage? And I mean that in a good way, not in like a gross, slimy way. You get what I'm saying. Is that person, did they get a raise because they're really good at making their case for why they deserve a raise? Well, that's something to inspire you. That's something worth learning more about if that's not an area of strength for you. That's what I mean. Okay. So yeah, let envy inspire you. Just don't get trapped in it. Number 6 is let history be a guide. This is what I mean by that. Everybody's got a history. I don't think everybody's history is equally challenging or equally advantageous. So that's not what I mean. Your history is your history. And a lot of times, very understandably, we will say, the reason I haven't done this is because of that, or the reason I feel too frightened of putting myself out there is because of this, or because I was told this growing up, and my point is all those things can be true. And from this moment on, do you want that history to define you? Because what happens is I think our histories can often create the walls of the maze. They do, right? Because we say, because I wasn't successful at this then, I won't be now. Or because my parents told me, who do you think you are? I've never felt entitled to be successful. The minute you know that, you have the opportunity to imagine putting your history, kind of like that chapter of your history, in a book and putting it on your shelf. It's still part of your life. What do you want to write for the upcoming chapter? And I know it's easier said than done. And again, if you need to see somebody to help you with that, that's important and you should do it. But this is just my advice. Number 7 is use self-hypnosis to your advantage. Now, we're, casting spells on ourselves in effect all of the time. We, related to the point I just made, our self-talk, our minds are creating our worlds. We create images that are so vivid that we take them as true. I've talked about hypnosis before, but just as we can create a very real assumption that we can't do something, we can also shift that narrative over time and with practice. And, whether it's listening to guided imagery like I have or somebody else has, there's thousands and thousands of ones you can choose. You don't have to pick mine, or working with a provider, or again, through journaling or something else, changing that idea of what's possible for you. That really relates also to not letting your history be a prison, but use self-hypnosis to your advantage. Everybody's capable of doing it. Just as an example, if you don't think your mind is powerful, let me just tell you that there are plenty of examples of people who have used hypnosis as the sole anesthesia during surgery. Now, I'm not recommending that, but I'm saying, I think I've mentioned Holly Forrester Miller before, but if not, you can Google her and Google hypnosis as the sole anesthesia. And, she had abdominal surgery with no anesthesia and let it be filmed. So it is possible. You don't even have to do that. You might just need to get out of your own way enough to try something new, or learn a new skill, or put yourself out there socially. I think that's actually easier than having surgery with no anesthesia. So, yeah, see how much easier that seems now? Okay. Almost done with this list. So number 8, remember that you are the architect of your life. I want you to think about yourself as a playwright or an author crafting the story of your journey. You're still writing the pages of what's to come. You're still writing the pages of later today, tomorrow, next week, the next years of your life. And again, like Ruth in her 80s, finding her new man and being wildly in love. And this is not somebody who lived to 150. It didn't matter. It's because every day can be an opportunity for us, right? An opportunity for abundance and joy. Write that into the script of your life. And number 9, get clear on your dreams. And I mean that in a literal sense. Before we started this list, I talked about how it's important to get clear on what you do, or at least what you don't want. I had Robert Wagner, a lucid dream expert, on my podcast last week. So Robert Wagner spoke about how you can get in the practice of literally realizing you're dreaming during your dreams and shifting those dreams. And what he said, and what's actually true, I think, is that you can get practiced in your mind, in your dreams, and it makes it that much easier to do things differently in your waking life. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I really believe in you, and I believe that you are worth cultivating an abundant life, whatever that means for you. I also just wanted to add, related to everything I've just said, if it feels like, oh, how am I going to do all these things, all these steps you're talking about? I'm planning on offering a workshop on cultivating abundance and getting past roadblocks. I think I'm going to push it back a little, maybe to mid-April, and you'll be able to find information about that on my social media and also on my website coming up. You don't have to take the workshop with me. You can do all of these things I've mentioned on your own, or just pick one and start there. But again, I really do believe in you. You've got this. And there's no time like the present to start making steps to make your life feel more abundant. You're worth it and you deserve it. All right. This has been another episode of Unpacking Possibility. If you enjoyed the episode, please do remember to like, share, follow, leave me a comment, tell a friend, and let me know what you want to hear more of. It really does help me continue bringing more good content to you. And until next time, as always, be well.